I'm here at Pro Motor Engineering. These guys build awesome engines. They've built power for everybody from the Cup Series to Xfinity to trucks to modifieds, dirt cars, pavement cars, boats, anything you want to go fast in. And Dennis and his guys have been partners in this modified build since day one. Today, the guys from AEM Electronics here, we're going to dyno that all aluminum big SB2 to find out how much horsepower it makes.
So we're here on the engine dyno and we've got everything hooked up. We've got our AEM 708 ECU plugged into this custom BMRS wiring harness. And we're using our AEM smart coils, 8 of them. So we'll be doing full sequential ignition and fuel. And we've got a full AEM fuel system. So there's an AEM fuel pressure regulator, pressure sensor, and down here below underneath the engine, we've got our 380 liter per hour AEM high flow fuel pump. And right now we're just basically finishing up making some connections here for all of our sensors, just connecting to the ECU, make sure everything's reading properly. Once everything checks out, we let the engine warm up. We're going to start doing some part throttle runs and doing a little bit of fuel and ignition tuning. Once we start getting to doing our full throttle runs, I'll be looking at the wideband air-fuel ratios on both banks of the engine and making some adjustments there, adjusting our VE table to suit this engine. And we'll also be adjusting the ignition timing, looking for obviously best torque at all RPMs. And once we do that, we can start looking at individual wideband air-fuel ratios per cylinder. And if we see that the sensors are reading differently per cylinder, then we'll make a couple corrections within the ECU to make sure that all 8 cylinders are running equally. And we're just about ready to fire it up.
Hey, we finally got the results back from our test at Pro Motor. Running that engine on the dyno, it made 850 plus horsepower. Now compared to this winning NASCAR modified that makes 650 horsepower, that's a lot. Ours isn't exactly NASCAR legal, but it's going to be a lot more fun going down that straightaway with 200 more horsepower. Today's an important day. We're trying to work out the final cooling. Now we know that how much horsepower we've got. We've got to carry as much water, obviously, as we can. We've got a pressure system, so we've got to get all that final fit stuff before we start to build that radiator, because we want to make sure that we're headed down the proper road.
CNR Racing was a company started by Chris Paulson out of Indianapolis. Has a long history in racing. This particular project, NASCAR has come up with a spec package. So to develop this cooling package, we actually took the spec package and we shortened it to fit it in the small nose area that you were discussing earlier.
When you're building a radiator for a project like this, what's more important? Volume, flow, cooling capacity?
Airspeed's always the #1 key. The ductwork is critical to the cooling packages. Air takes the path of least resistance. So if there's ever any type of escape route for the air, it's going to find that first. Definitely want to always keep the ductwork completely closed off in the front to force the air across the entire core face.
How are you planning on doing that, Dan?
We're going to have a narrow, kind of a narrow opening, but the radiator's actually going to be wide. So the grill's going to be out here somewhere. So we're going to have to make ductwork that actually flares out to the outside of the radiator.
Pretty quickly then, too. Yeah. When Dennis from Pro Motor was here, I mean, he's talking about we could run this thing up to 220 degrees, but we want to put 50 pounds of pressure on it in the expansion tank. Any issue with that?
No, that's a good point. The tube in the radiator that we'll be using for this particular car is an extruded tube race core. It has a burst pressure of 110 PSI. 110
PSI, so we're plenty good at 50.
We're plenty good at 50.
Okay. All right, how long does it normally take you to build a custom radiator like that to be ready to go in this thing?
We're here for final checkoff of the prints that we got developed, but we're getting pretty close to production, so hopefully we can have a radiator and an oil cooler in about 3 weeks.
Eddie, got any questions?
No, I think the print looks exactly what we need. The mock-up one that we gave you. And you get it built, we just got to make little brackets to hold it in there. But once we get it, we'll make that up, and I think it'll be good.
All we need now is a driver.
Well, we have that. And there's plenty of them out there. If we
There's
don't have
plenty
a good
of them
one.
out there. They're easy.
They're a dime a dozen, the drivers.
Tune in to see what we do on next week's Big Iron Garage.